First contact catastrophe. The emergency klaxons shattered the calm of Outpost Braxis 7, their piercing wail echoing through the hollowed asteroid that housed the forward defense station. Senior scanner technician Lorik's 4 appendages trembled as he verified the readings for the 3rd time. The energy signature was unmistakable. Commander Drezek. Unidentified vessel detected entering the Vraxian system. Lorik called out, his voice cracking. Energy patterns match. They match human technology. The command center fell silent. 12 Vraxian officers froze at their stations, their chromatic skin shifting involuntarily to pale blue, the biological response to extreme fear. Commander Drezek, a veteran of 3 interstellar campaigns, approached the main scanner console with deliberate calm, though his own skin betrayed a slight blue tinge around his neck membranes. Magnification. Full spectrum analysis, Drezek ordered, his 4 eyes narrowing as the holographic display expanded. The ship materialized in the projection, sleek, angular, with a hull of dark composite materials that absorbed rather than reflected light. Its design was unmistakably human, practical, utilitarian, with none of the ceremonial flourishes that adorned Vraxian vessels. But most concerning was its size. The ship was massive, easily 4 times larger than the biggest vessel in the Vraxian fleet. Classification, Drezek demanded. Lorik's voice was barely audible. Matches known parameters for a human warship, Thanatos-class destroyer. A collective gasp rippled through the command center. The Thanatos class was infamous, even in the limited encounters the Vraxian collective had documented with humans. 3 centuries ago, a single Thanatos-class vessel had obliterated an entire Zenithian battle group, 17 warships, in less than 20 minutes. Time to weapon range, Drezek asked. 6 hours at current velocity, Commander, the navigation officer responded. Drezek's mind raced. The Vraxian homeworld, Vrixia Prime, housed 8 billion citizens. Their planetary defenses were formidable, but against a human warship, their shields would last minutes at best. Send emergency code Obsidian to all military installations. Alert the High Council. Begin civilian evacuation to the deep shelters. Drezek's orders came in rapid succession. And contact Central Command. Request immediate deployment of the entire home fleet. As officers scrambled to execute his commands, Science Officer Ilara approached Drezek's station. Unlike her colleagues, the Lara's skin remained its natural violet hue. She had always been different, more analytical, less prone to emotional reactions. "Commander, may I speak freely?" she asked, her voice low enough that only Drezek could hear. "Quickly, Ilara. We have little time." The human vessel has maintained a constant velocity since entering our system. No evasive maneuvers, no attempt to mask its approach. Its weapon systems appear to be in standby mode. She paused. "This doesn't match the attack pattern protocols in our database." Drezek frowned. "Your point? Perhaps they're not here to attack us." The commander's dismissive laugh was harsh. "Have you forgotten your history, Science Officer? The Meridian Massacre, the glass fields of Arcturus. Humans don't come in peace. With respect, Commander, our historical records are incomplete. All documented human-Vraxian interactions have been at a distance. We've never actually established direct communication." Before Drezek could respond, the communications officer interrupted. "Commander, High Council is online for emergency briefing." The main display shifted to show 7 elderly Vraxians, their ceremonial garments indicating their status as the highest authority in the collective. Their expressions reflected varying degrees of concern and terror. "Counselors," Drezek began, bowing deeply, "we have confirmed the presence of a human warship entering our system. I've initiated evacuation protocols and requested full military deployment." High Counselor Vex leaned forward, her ancient face lined with worry. "How long do we have, Commander?" 6 hours until they reach weapon range of the homeworld. The deep shelters can accommodate only 30% of our population," another counselor noted, his voice trembling. Then we prioritize the young and those with critical skills, Counselor Vex decided. And what of our military options? Drezek straightened his posture. The home fleet will intercept before they reach Vrixia Prime. We'll throw everything we have at them. And if that fails? Vex asked, though they all knew the answer. Then we activate the Sundering, Drezek replied grimly. The counselors exchanged solemn glances. The Sundering was their final resort, a super weapon capable of collapsing space-time in a localized area. It would destroy the human ship but would also render their star system uninhabitable for generations. Let us pray it doesn't come to that, Vex said. Proceed with your preparations, Commander. As the transmission ended, Ilara approached Drezek again. Commander, before we commit to a path that could lead to the Sundering, I request permission to attempt communication. Communication, Drezek scoffed. With humans? Yes. Our linguists have studied their broadcast patterns. We believe we can transmit a basic greeting that they would understand. Drezek's initial instinct was to refuse, but decades of command had taught him to consider all options. What would you say to them? The truth. That we perceive their approach as potentially hostile based on historical precedent, but that we are open to peaceful dialogue if that is their intent. For several moments, Drezek was silent, weighing the minimal risk of attempting communication against the certainty of conflict if they didn't. Finally, he nodded. You have my authorization, Science Officer, but make it clear that we are prepared to defend ourselves. Ilara worked quickly with the communications team, constructing a message that would be transmitted on multiple frequencies and in various formats that human systems might recognize. As they finished, a new alert sounded. Commander, Lorik called out. The human vessel has altered course. It's accelerating. Drezek rushed to the scanner console. Time to intercept. Recalculating. 3 hours. Commander. They must have detected our communications preparation, Drezek concluded. This confirms their hostile intent. Cancel the transmission attempt. But Commander, Ilara began. That's an order. All stations, battle preparation. Activate automated defense grid. Across Vrixia Prime, citizens flooded toward the underground shelters. News of the approaching human warship had spread rapidly, causing widespread panic. In the capital city, vehicles clogged the streets as families attempted to gather supplies before seeking refuge. Emergency sirens wailed continuously, their ominous tone a soundtrack to the unfolding crisis. In orbit, the pride of the Vraxian fleet, 27 warships, moved into defensive formation. Their captains knew the odds were against them, but were prepared to sacrifice everything to protect their homeworld. Back at Outpost Praxis 7, Ilara watched the main display with growing unease. Something about the human ship's approach still bothered her. Despite Drezek's orders, she quietly instructed a junior communications officer to continue monitoring all frequencies for any human transmissions. Commander, the weapons officer announced, automated defense satellites are now tracking the human vessel. They'll be within firing range in 17 minutes. Drezek nodded grimly. The moment they're in range, fire warning shots across their bow. If they continue to advance, unleash everything we have. Yes, Commander. The weapons officer's hands hovered over the control interface, ready to unleash devastation. Suddenly, the junior communications officer who had been working with Ilara called out, Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the human ship. The command center fell silent again as all eyes turned to Drezek. After a moment's hesitation, he ordered, put it through. The main display flickered, and then an image appeared that none of them were prepared for. Instead of the fearsome, battle-hardened warriors of legend, they saw a human female with silver-streaked hair, wearing what appeared to be civilian attire. This is Captain Eleanor Chen of the Earth diplomatic vessel Reconciliation, the human said, speaking slowly and clearly. We come in peace, seeking dialogue with the Vraxian collective. Please respond. Drezek and Ilara exchanged bewildered glances. The massive warship was a diplomatic vessel. It made no sense. Before either could respond, the weapons officer shouted, "Commander, the automated defense grid has locked on. It's firing warning shots." Horror dawned on Drezak's face. "Override. Cancel the attack." "I can't, sir. Once the automated sequence begins, it must complete the protocol." They watched in helpless dread as 5 powerful energy beams lanced from Phryxia Prime's orbital defense platforms, cutting through space directly in front of the human ship. On the still-open transmission, they saw Captain Chen's expression change from peaceful greeting to alarm. The human turned away from the camera, shouting orders to her crew. "What have we done?" Ilara whispered as the transmission abruptly cut off. Drezak's voice was hollow as he gave what might be his final order. "All personnel, prepare for imminent human retaliation." Unexpected revelations. The command center of Outpost Braxis 7 had descended into controlled chaos. Officers frantically worked their stations as Commander Drezak awaited the human response to their accidental provocation. The warning shots had passed harmlessly in front of the massive human vessel, but the message they sent was unmistakable and unintended. "The human ship has stopped," Lorik reported, disbelief in his voice. All forward momentum ceased. "They're just sitting there." "Weapons status," Drezak demanded. "No energy buildup detected," the weapons officer replied, equally confused. "Their defensive shields are active, but weapon systems remain dormant." Ilara stepped forward. "Commander, they've reopened the communication channel." With a nod from Drezak, the main display activated again. Captain Eleanor Chen's face appeared, now composed but serious. "Vraxian Command, we recognize your defensive measures as a warning rather than an attack," the human said calmly. "We will maintain our current position while we attempt to resolve this misunderstanding. Our mission is peaceful. I repeat, we come as diplomats, not conquerors." Drezak approached the communication array. After a moment's hesitation, he responded, "This is Commander Drezak of the Vraxian Defense Force. Your vessel matches our records of human warships. You must understand our caution." "I do understand, Commander," Chen replied. The Reconciliation was indeed a Thanatos-class destroyer in a previous life. After the Galactic Accord, many warships were repurposed for peaceful missions. Ours now serves as a diplomatic vessel. "Galactic Accord," Drezak repeated, unfamiliar with the term. A flicker of surprise crossed the human's face. "You don't know. The peace agreement signed by 17 spacefaring civilizations, including humanity, over 70 years ago." The Vraxians in the command center exchanged confused glances. Their civilization had been isolationist for centuries, deliberately avoiding contact with other species after early disastrous encounters. "We have been disconnected from galactic affairs," Drezak admitted carefully. "I see," Chen nodded thoughtfully. "That explains much. Commander, would you permit a small shuttle to dock with your station? I would like to meet in person to discuss our mission." Before Drezak could respond, Ilara interjected, "Perhaps instead, I could come to you." A single Vraxian representative in an unarmed shuttle. Drezak shot her a warning glance. Chen nodded. "That would be acceptable. We will power down all defensive systems during your approach as a show of good faith." After the transmission ended, Drezak confronted Ilara. "You overstepped your authority, science officer." "Yes, Commander," she acknowledged. "But consider the strategic advantage. If they harbor hostile intent, they sacrifice nothing by destroying one shuttle. However, if their intentions are as stated, this gives us an opportunity to gather intelligence without risking our defensive position." Drezak considered her logic, then reluctantly nodded. "Very well. But you will wear a data recorder. Everything you see and hear must be transmitted back to us." "Understood, Commander." Within the hour, Ilara's small shuttle departed from Praxis 7, making the short journey to where the imposing human vessel waited. Despite its allegedly peaceful mission, the Reconciliation was intimidating. over 2 kilometers in length, its dark hull absorbing the light from Phryxia's sun rather than reflecting it. As her shuttle approached, she observed sections of the hull retracting to reveal a docking bay. Following the transmitted guidance coordinates, Ilara maneuvered into the cavernous space, noting with scientific curiosity the rows of smaller craft lining the walls, some clearly designed for exploration rather than combat. When the shuttle powered down, Ilara took a moment to steady herself. She would be the first Vraxian in recorded history to meet humans face to face. The significance of the moment was not lost on her. The shuttle's hatch opened to reveal 3 humans waiting. Captain Chen stood in the center, flanked by 2 others in different uniforms. All 3 were shorter than Ilara had expected, the tallest barely reaching 2 meters, considerably less than the average Vraxian height. Science Officer Ilara. Chen greeted her with a small bow. "Welcome aboard the Reconciliation. These are my diplomatic officers, Dr. Kaido Nakamura and Ambassador Adela Okonkwo." Ilara returned the gesture, careful to maintain the proper distance that her cultural briefing had suggested. "Thank you for receiving me, Captain. I must admit, this is an historic occasion for my people." "As it is for us," Chen replied. "Please, join us in our conference room, where we can speak more comfortably." As they walked through the ship's corridors, Ilara observed everything with careful attention. The interior was utilitarian but not Spartan, with surprisingly numerous civilian personnel moving with purpose. There were no visible weapons, though Ilara noted multiple security checkpoints where they were scanned discreetly. The conference room was a circular chamber with a transparent ceiling offering a view of space, and currently, Vrixia Prime in the distance. A round table occupied the center, with various seating options that seemed designed to accommodate different physiologies. Once seated, Captain Chen activated a holographic display. "Science Officer, before we discuss our mission, I believe some historical context would be beneficial. Much of what the Vraxian Collective knows about humanity may be outdated or incomplete." The display showed images of Earth, a blue-green world not unlike Vrixia Prime, and then a timeline of human interstellar exploration and conflicts. 3 centuries ago, Chen explained, humanity was fragmented, with various Earth nations competing for resources as we expanded into space. This led to conflicts not only among ourselves, but with other species we encountered. The Thanatos-class destroyers were products of that era, weapons of war for a species that knew little else. Ilara watched as the timeline progressed, showing devastating wars followed by periods of uneasy peace, culminating in a massive conflict called the Nexus Crisis. "The Nexus Crisis was our turning point," Ambassador Okonkwo continued. "A coalition of species, pushed to desperation by human aggression, developed a weapon that could have eradicated our homeworld. In the final hours, both sides realized the futility of mutual destruction. From that realization, the Galactic Accord was born. For 70 years, Dr. Nakamura added, we have worked to rebuild trust, to transform our warships into vessels of exploration and diplomacy, and to make amends where possible." Ilara absorbed this information, comparing it with Vraxian historical records. "Our encounters with humans predate this accord. We withdrew from galactic affairs after several disastrous early contacts with spacefaring species, including a brief skirmish with what our records identify as human scout ships." "The Epsilon incident," Chen nodded grimly. "It's in our records too. A tragic first contact scenario where both sides misinterpreted the other's actions as hostile." "If I may ask," Ilara said carefully, "what brings you to Vraxian space now, after all this time?" The 3 humans exchanged glances before Chen responded, 2 reasons. "First, as part of the Accord, we've been methodically reaching out to all species with whom humanity had previous contact, seeking reconciliation. The Vraxian Collective was next on our list. And the second reason," Captain Chen's expression grew serious, "a threat that concerns all sapient life. We've detected evidence of a non-biological intelligence expanding from the galactic core, what we call the convergence. It doesn't communicate. It simply absorbs and converts. 3 star systems have already gone dark. Ilara's skin paled slightly. You believe this? Convergence will reach Braxian space. Eventually, yes. But united, we stand a better chance of developing defenses. Chen hesitated. That's why we came in a former warship. The reconciliation carries not only diplomats, but also our most advanced scientific minds and defensive technologies. Resources we're prepared to share. As Ilara processed this information, a priority transmission from Commander Drezek interrupted their discussion. Ilara, return immediately, his tense voice ordered. The High Council has authorized deployment of the Sundering if the human ship makes any aggressive move. Captain Chen had heard the message. The Sundering, you possess a space-time collapse weapon. Ilara hesitated, then nodded. Our final defense option. Such weapons were outlawed by the Accord, Ambassador Okonkwo said quietly. They threaten the stability of space-time itself. We've been isolated, Ilara reminded them. And afraid. Captain Chen rose from her seat. Then let us end that isolation and fear today. Science Officer Ilara, I formally invite a Vraxian delegation, including your military command and civilian leadership, aboard the Reconciliation. Let us show you everything, answer all questions, and begin building trust. Ilara transmitted the invitation back to Vraxis 7. After tense deliberations, Commander Drezek agreed to come aboard with a small security detail, while the High Council would participate via holographic projection. 6 hours later, Commander Drezek stood on the observation deck of the Reconciliation, looking out at his homeworld. Beside him stood Captain Chen. Your people thought we came to destroy them, Chen said softly. Instead, we may have arrived just in time to help save them. Drezek's skin had returned to its natural green hue. The fear response long subsided. How do species move beyond fear, Captain? After centuries of isolation, how do we learn to trust? One step at a time, Commander, Chen replied. Today, you allowed us to approach. Tomorrow, perhaps you'll allow us to help upgrade your defensive systems against the convergence. The day after, maybe cultural exchange. In the conference room below, Ilara was already deep in discussion with human scientists, comparing notes about unusual energy patterns detected at the edge of both their territories. The first tendrils of the convergence. As news spread across Vrixia Prime that the humans had come not as conquerors, but as allies, citizens began emerging from the shelters. The panic that had gripped the planet just hours before was subsiding, replaced by cautious curiosity about these legendary beings. The home fleet remained in defensive formation, but with weapons powered down, a posture mirrored by the Reconciliation. It was a fragile beginning, built on centuries of misunderstanding and fear, but it was a beginning nonetheless. Tell me, Captain, Drezek asked, as they continued to gaze at the stars, in your history, have there been other species who isolated themselves as we did, who feared you as we did? Many, Chen admitted, and each reconciliation has been unique. But they all started the same way, with 2 individuals from different worlds choosing conversation over conflict. Drezek nodded slowly. Perhaps there is wisdom in that approach. Perhaps there is, Chen agreed, as the first formal alliance between humans and Vraxians began to take shape, not through force of arms, but through the simple power of communication, a lesson both species had learned at great cost and would not soon forget.